Good evening. Glenn, get that baby registered right away. You're going to need him in November. Oh, this is a nonpartisan event. I'm sorry. I apologize. Happens every time. Good to be here, and it's my honor to introduce my old friend, Nick Littlefield. I thought in order to really honor him, I told Jenny, and I got Jenny kind of nervous about this, I said, why, just as a fundraising idea, why don't I sing a little bit? And then you could pay to stop me, to make me stop, as kind of an auction event, but she didn't like that, so I won't be doing that. Despite the tragedies that have occurred in this town over the last week, we have a couple of wonderful things that have happened in the last 24 hours. The first is the Affordable Care Act, despite the best efforts of the extreme right wing to stop it, is actually here to stay. And second, we're honoring Franklin, Hampshire crowd. I've got to say, I've been involved in health and human services in the state for a long time, and too long maybe, but Franklin, Hampshire County has always been the heart of the values of human services in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so congratulations for all that you do. And to our great governor, Deval Patrick, we would not be here with every single child in this Commonwealth having health insurance today had it not been for Deval Patrick. So thank you for that. And God, if we could just keep Glenn Shore as Secretary of A&F forever, wouldn't that be great, huh? Terrific. Well, I first met Nick. I know I don't look this old, but I first met him in 1978 when then State Representative Andy Card, you remember Andy? Andy Card and I, believe it, in those days, Republicans and Democrats actually talked to each other and worked together, and we pushed through some legislation to expose corruption in the state's building and construction process, and Nick was made the head of it. So I go back with Nick a long time before he worked for Senator Kennedy, and I've watched him all these years. And I don't think there's anybody I've known in my life that I have more regard for and more respect for than Nick Littlefield. So it's a great honor for me to say some things about him that I think all of you would want to say to him were you here in my spot and being able to speak about how you feel about him. So let me just start by saying, Nick, we honor you for the extraordinary commitment to integrity and fairness you've demonstrated throughout your career, which was most notably reflected in your transformative work as director of the Ward Commission, which exposed that corruption of the Massachusetts building and construction process, and it led to dramatic changes in protecting the public from such corruption. As a longtime partner at Foley Hoag and as an assistant United States attorney, which is where Nick started as an assistant U.S. attorney in New York, you developed a reputation for being among the best and most respected lawyers of your generation. We honor you also for your lifelong dedication to racial, social, and economic justice for all of our citizens. Your partnership with Senator Kennedy over the 10 years you served as staff director and chief counsel of the Help Committee staff produced dozens of important new laws. Amy's mentioned a few of them, but listen just to cherry pick a few of them. This will just blow your minds when you hear some of the things that the folks at this table, led by Nick Littlefield and Senator Kennedy, accomplished during that period. Medicare Part D, the American Disabilities Act, the Ryan White AIDS Care Act, the National Health Service Corps revitalization, the first increase in minimum wage since 1981 was led by Ted Kennedy and Nick Littlefield, and we're going to do it again, right, this year. The Child Care Block Grant, which was the first comprehensive child care legislation enacted in this country since World War II. The Employee Pension Protection Act, the Drug-Free Schools Amendments, the Civil Rights Act of 1991, the National Institute of Health Revitalization Act, which included for the first time initiatives for women's health and removal of the ban on fetal tissue research and childhood immunization initiatives. The Family and Medical Leave Act came out of that committee, and he led that fight. The Goals 2000 School Reform Act, the Student Loan Reform Act, the National and Community Service Trust Act, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Kennedy-Kassebaum HIPAA legislation, the Children's Health Insurance and Lower Deficit Act, S-CHIP. Where would this country be today in 2014 had it not been for Nick Littlefield and Ted Kennedy? I think we'd be. And I want you all also to recognize, as Amy did, some of the other heroes who were here with them, and I'm sure Nick will mention them as well. David Nexon, who was one of the longest serving aides to Senator Kennedy and worked very, very closely with Nick. Connie Garner, who was probably the leading disabilities advocate in Washington, and Mike Myers, who succeeded Nick as the head of the committee and was equally dedicated and committed to change in this country. So that's just a sampling of the bipartisan legislative achievements of Senator Kennedy and Nick Littlefield. But we also honor you, Nick, because history will record that your ongoing work with Senator Kennedy was instrumental in the final passage of the Affordable Care Act, the most important domestic legislation since 1965, which, as we all know, will ultimately provide health insurance to over 30 million previously uninsured citizens in the United States. And as a dedicated member of the board of directors of the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts Foundation, Nick, you played a key role in helping to secure the enactment of the Massachusetts health reform legislation in 2006, which formed the basis of the ACA. And I must say as well, we honor you, Nick, for your talent and for your love for the American musical theater. Your exuberant embrace of standards by our greatest songwriters, Irving Berlin, Jerome Kern, the Gershwins, Cole Porter, I won't sing, and your delight in performing their music have given your family and your friends countless opportunities to share with you your love of this music. And there was no one who enjoyed that music more than Senator Kennedy, who often said he would have preferred to have been a Broadway performer rather than a politician. Maybe they're sort of the same in a way. Most of all, Nick, we honor you tonight for the kind of person you are. Smart, decent, funny, talented in so many ways, a loving husband to your Jenny, a wonderful dad to Frank, Tom, and Kate, wonderful grandfather to the next generation, a faithful and loyal friend to a vast number of pals from many different walks of life, a mentor to dozens of younger people whom you have helped over the years, and the most amazing professional collaborator at Foley Hoag. And they're here tonight, recognized folks from Foley Hoag with whom you've worked, the Ward Commission in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and with Senator Kennedy in the United States Senate. All of us involved with this extraordinary organization, Healthcare for All, love you, and we know, as Cole Porter would say, that Nick Littlefield, you're the top. Please welcome Nick Littlefield.
Oh, Phil, what a great introduction. I could do a similar one for you, starting with the wards you mentioned, and all your health work. And I remember at one time we worked together in Washington on Health Care for America. You started that organization back in 1990, and we had great potential. We could do all the things that Healthcare for All does, sort of modeled after Healthcare for All. And just ever since then, with the board of the Blue Cross Foundation, you've done incredible work, Plus, Phil also is a lover of musical theater, and I was done Coazit about 10 years ago, and Liza Minnelli was performing the hottest summer night you've ever known, and there she was. She was just great. She was knockout. And Phil and I were in New York, and she just knocked the socks off. So I also want to thank Amy, Rob, Ratusha, all you executive directors out there for the Healthcare for All work, which is the basis of everything the legislators have been able to pull off. It's your grassroots and your implementation of healthcare that makes it work. So Amy, on behalf of all of us, we thank you. And I thank you. Okay. Liz, Jay, Paul, Phil, for organizing the dinner. Thank you. Some of you may be wondering why I'm in a wheelchair. It's a recent thing for me, but I was diagnosed with a progressive neurologic disease. It's an atypical Parkinson's, very, very rare. More than 3 years ago, when I was 69 years old. And the disease affects my balance and my mobility particularly, so I can't walk or get around. But I do normally use the walker or the wheelchair, obviously. I thank myself for the Americans with Disabilities Act every day of the year. In fact, I thank myself for a lot of those acts, which are now depending on research in Parkinson's. Well, there's lots of them. But I didn't expect the Rare Disease Orphan Drug Acts. We worked on for years. We had to protect the Orphan Drug Act, and now my disease is the most orphan disease you could imagine. There are only 400 or 500 people in the United States and of course there is no treatment. There is symptoms can be treated. I also want to thank John Goodson, my doctor, and an extraordinary leader in healthcare who's in front table. John, thank you. You know, I told Jenny I'd say this, and my voice, of course, isn't quite what it used to be. Luckily, I won't be asked to sing. No, I do any singing. I quit that. I just like listening. But some days are worse than others with the voice. And it may affect my speech, but I assure you it doesn't affect my mind. So seriously, if you ever know people with neurological diseases and you think they're talking funny, they may talk funny, but you should not assume that their mind is also funny. It's a very serious thing, prejudices we don't know about. Oh, I can't see to the back of the room if I speak too fast. No, I can turn back. Yeah. Thank you, Kate. Kate's my daughter. She's and Doug, her husband, the people who rolled me up onto the stage, and Jared rolled me up on the stage. Thank you, Kate, Doug, all my kids who Phil had kindness to mention, Jenny, of course. Without you, what would we be? But I want to say, to be recognized with this group is an incredible gift to the Franklin County advocates, the Glenn Shore and the governor. And aren't the governor and Glenn terrific champions for health care? Haven't they fought all the way? Oh, we lucky as hell that we got them behind us. Every time the governor, just think anybody else, if we had any other governor for these 8 years, it's probably possible that we would not have the kind of aggressive health care we have. Every time he's had the chance, he is there behind. And we know that it wouldn't be the case if he'd lost the election. So we thank God for that. And by the way, I know Deval quite well. I saw his potential as a powerful public figure very early. You may remember this, Deval, I'm sure you do, when I was teaching at Harvard Law School in 1981. Deval was enrolled in my course, my trial advocacy course. And we had a series of mock trials, and I think some of Deval's cases involved traffic offenses and other minor offenses of that sort. And we were nevertheless treated to a full display of his considerable oratorical talents. Even in traffic offense, you should have seen him at work. I knew right then we had somebody in the making, a great politician. 1981, the defendant had no chance for going through that red light. Some of the people in this room have been mentioned already, but I worked with them on health care in Senator Kennedy's office. I want to share this award with each of you, and I'm going to mention a few of you, even though you've already been mentioned, because we worked together like hand and glove for many years. Maybe you could stand up and stay standing. David Nexon, Senator Kennedy's health record since the early 80s. David worked with Kennedy, as I say, from the early 80s way into the 90s, 2000s, and he was very close to the senator and was instrumental in every single one of the health care bills. Now, there's a man who hasn't been mentioned yet, but who was very, very, very important to Senator Kennedy, Mark Childress. Mark. Mark, we're delighted to have you here from Washington. Mark started with Senator Kennedy when I did in 1988, and later transferred to Senator Daschle when Kennedy, at some point, he transferred to Daschle, and then to President Obama, where he worked on health care, and then back to Senator Kennedy for one key year at the end of Kennedy's life to do health reform, and I think that was one of the most extraordinary moves he had done. He'd finished, couldn't bear working in the government anymore, and then it was just, and then Senator Kennedy got sick, and he was so close to Senator Kennedy that he came back as a staffer to work in Senator Kennedy's office. I remember the call, Mark, when you called and said, guess what, I'm going back to the Senate. I said, I don't believe it. I'm going to work with Senator Kennedy, and I started crying. It was just an incredible act of friendship and loyalty, and it meant an enormous amount to all of us who have worked with Kennedy and loved him, which we did. And Mike Myers, who succeeded me, stand up, Mike. Mike succeeded me as staff director for Kennedy's committee, and among other bills, shepherded a bipartisan Medicare bill through the committee, through the Senate. It was tarnished by the House, but then it eventually passed, and I think we would not possibly survive in the healthcare world without Medicare Part D. And we know you and Senator Frist did that bill after I left. And we know Obamacare wouldn't be what it is without you and your work for Kennedy while he was alive, and then when he died with Senator Dodd. So congratulations to you. Connie, will you stand up? Connie Garner is Connie Garner was Senator's disability expert, and she is, as Phil said, the top disability expert anywhere in America. So congratulations, Connie. You passed so many important mental health parity was Connie and Patrick Kennedy. That was the great conference. We had a conference between the House and the Senate. On the one side was that fighting hero of mine, Ted Kennedy. On the other side from the House was that stunning young legislator, Patrick Kennedy, and the two of them would meet. And that was the conference. But Connie was right there in the middle writing the bill, keeping them at arm's length from each other. I think that John McDonough is also here. Are you here, John? I can't see in the light, but he was, of course, formerly the executive director of Healthcare for All, and the word for Kennedy during the Obamacare period, and has done it so much for healthcare in Massachusetts back to the Dukakis era, the era when he was working with Phil in the legislature as a legislator and author, and now Harvard School of Public Health. John is really as knowledgeable as there is in the state. And Jeff Wong, Patrick Manso, stand up guys, Matt Seelig, Seth Hammond, and Eric Olney were all Kennedy Health staffers. I've probably forgotten. I don't know who else is here who worked for Kennedy, but you may stand up also. Probably most everybody did. Glenn, you didn't. I felt the governor did when he came down. We got him confirmed in the civil rights institution. You let him sometime tell you the story of meetings. Senator Kennedy would stand outside the Senate with Duval, and you would drag members of the Judiciary Committee over to meet Duval, and Duval imitates each of those senators so well. He's got great talent at that. Just give him a little bit when you're up here. And I'll tell you, his Strom Thurmond makes me laugh, and I even think of it. So, Brian Carey, of course, is my sidekick, my indispensable other part of my law practice. And Brian, I met you when you were in Kennedy's house with me, and you were an indispensable friend and brilliant lawyer and colleague, and at Foley Hill, where you have been with me for 15 years. So I thank you and make special note of you, Brian Carey. No, that's it. You guys may sit down. But you would. Yeah. And my inspiration, of course, came from Senator Kennedy, who made sure that our committee in the Senate made health care its biggest priority from the moment he became chairman in 1986. We were the only committee in the House or Senate to pass a universal health care bill, and we passed it. And in 1994, we were the only committee to pass health care, the Clinton health care bill, through our committee. And when the bill failed on the floor, Senator Kennedy spoke. I suggest you all remember this, because this is what he said and what he felt. And this was 1994. I will never rest until every American has health insurance. I will never rest while any parent in America goes to bed not knowing what would happen if their child got sick. I will never rest while any senior in America is left without long home care or long GDL fish. No leaf fish. Just, yeah, it's the last paragraph. All home care or long-term care or the drugs. We have come a long way, as the senator said, 1994 September. We will not give up today. We will take the bill down today. We will be back next year. And we will continue to fight. And someday we will prevail. Well, it took 24 years, but without Kennedy, Obamacare would not have passed. And we all know that. Finally, and this is it. I do want to say that I sit here in front of you as one who is the best, most thorough health care available anywhere in the world. For years, I was like many of you, just an advocate, working with my tail for health care for all. But now I see it from a different position. Now afflicted with a rare disease, I am a patient, consumer of extensive health care. And I can't imagine what my life would be like if I did not have health care, and if it wasn't as thorough as it is. And if I did live in Massachusetts, it wouldn't be anywhere near as good. But from my personal experience, I know how access to medical care is, like having enough to eat, like shelter to live in, like air to breathe, like water to drink. There can be no greater calling on the public agenda today to all of you, I say, than making sure that Obamacare survives and the 7 million becomes 20 million, becomes 40 million, and succeeds in covering everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.